Okay, so our first method we're going to do is our estimation. So we're going to write out our equation 23 by 16. So those numbers aren't very easy to work with. So we're going to write out some easier ones. We're going to round down to 20 and 10. So that will give us 200. So we know that if we round down, our answer has to be at least above 200. So our next equation we're going to do is 25 times 10, and that will give us 250. So we know that our equation should be around 250 now that we've gotten a little bit closer. Next, we're going to go 20 by 15, and that will give us 300. So this is just an estimation, so at least we know about where our numbers should be. So now we're going to work with some base 10 blocks to try and help us figure out. So we know that our equation is 23 by 16, so we're going to put 2 rods down here, which equals 20, and then we're going to take 3 units, which equals 3. So now we're going to add our 16, so we have 1 rod, which is 10, and then we're going to take 6 units, so there's our 16. So now we're going to take our 2 rods, which is 10 by 10, and add a flat. Then we're going to do the same thing here. So now we're timesing 10 by 1, which is 10, so we're just going to add our rods, and same thing there, just going all the way up where it is 1 rod by 1 unit. So now we're going to go 1 unit by 1 unit, which will give us 1. So we're just going to add all of our units all the way up, which does take a little bit of time, but it's easier so we can actually see it. This number is a little bit hard for us to figure out just looking at those. So we're going to count up our rods, and we're going to see that we have at least 10 that we can make into a flat. So we're going to take 10 and trade that into a flat. Now we have 5 rods left over. Now we're going to do the same with our ones, count up our ones, and get rid of 10 of those. And then we'll switch them in for a rod, and then we have 8 left over. And that's how we get 368. So now I'm going to show you how to do this symbolically. First, what we need to do is write out our equation, 23 times 16. Then what we need to do is we need to look at our ones position. So we have 2 numbers in our ones position, both 6 and 3. So now we need to multiply our ones by our ones. So that is like saying 6 groups of 3. 6 groups of 3 will give us 18. So now we're going to focus again on that 6, and we are going to multiply 6 groups of 2 tens. And that will be like timesing 6 by 20, and that'll give us 120. So now what we're going to do is we are going to move over to 10 groups of 3 ones, so 10 times 3, and that we're looking at replacing our 6 with a 0 because technically we've already used it, and we're going up to the other one, so the 3, and we're going to times 10 by 3 to give us 30. Then the last kind of step for our multiplication is we're going to do 10 groups of 2 tens, so 10 times 20. So again, we've already dealt with the ones, so we are just going to multiply the 10 and the 20, so the tens position, which will give us 200. Now we're just going to add it up, and we have 8, and then 2 plus 3 plus 1 is 6, and then 2 plus 1 is 3 to give us 368. So now I'm going to show you how to do this pictorially. So we're going to draw this graph, and we're going to write our equation down here just to remind us. So we are going to take our 23 and put it on our x-axis, and then our 16 and put it on our y-axis. So we're going to draw out our 2 rods, which will equal 20, and then our 3 units for 3. And then going vertically, we are going to do 16, so 1 rod and 6 units. Now we are going to multiply a rod by a rod, which will give us a flat, and then same thing, rod by rod equals flat. Then we're going to multiply a rod by 1, or a unit, which will give us rods. So now we just got to draw them all out. And then when we multiply a unit by a unit, that will give us 1 unit. So now this is kind of hard to see just like before. So we are going to group them up, and 10 rods make a flat. So now we have 5 rods left. Then we are going to go over to our units. Take out 10 units to make 1 rod, and that will leave us with 368. So this is my personal method, which I learned in another math class. So we are going to put our 16 and 23 in this graph. So it is important to note that the 1 and the 2 are both in the 10 spot, so I just wrote the little 10s, as well as the 6 and the 3 are in the 1 spot. So that's important so we don't miss it. So we are going to multiply our 20 by our 10 to give us 200, and then 20 by 6, which will give us 120. It is important to note that 2 times 6 will give us 12, and then you just add the 0. 3 times 10 will give us 30, and 3 times 6 will give us 18, which is a basic fact. And when you add them all up, 200 plus 120 plus 30 and 18 equals 368.